Now for this next bit, we want to set the mentor to have the last name here. And to do this bit, we need to understand how scopes work in Angular, because we have one controller that has a departments list here, and we have a different controller that has a mentors list here, and we have to combine the two. So what I'm going to do to start here is I'm going to go to my mentor tool module and add a controller. Called mentor tool controller, and it's just going to take a scope, and when it gets run, all it's going to do is console.log mentor tool controller, and then console.log scope. So that'll show the scope available here. And then I'm also going to do the same thing for the department table module right here at the top. So this is the department table controller. And then the same thing for the mentor blocks module controller. Oops. Grab these lines again. And let's see what happens when I run this code. So console, reload. So the mentor blocks controller is this thing here, and it's a child scope, and it should have an ID, ID2, and it's got a parent which has ID1. So ID1, this is the root scope here, and the mentor tool has a child scope of the root scope, and that means that anything that's set on the parent is available to the child as well, but not vice versa. So if I set a property on this child scope, it's not going to affect the parent or other sibling scopes. And then I didn't get anything for the mentor blocks module or the department module, so did I remember to save those things? Yeah, so I saved that. And I saved, oh, I didn't save that one. So mentor tool, mentor blocks, and department table controller. So let's go ahead and reload again. Okay, so the mentor blocks controller has child ID 2, and the department table controller has child ID 3. So those are siblings, but they both have the same parent. Parent is ID 1. Right? And then my mentor tool controller isn't getting called at all because I don't have it attached to anything. So in order to get this called, I have to attach the controller to something in my web page. So let's go ahead and put it here, even though it doesn't really do anything. And now if I reload, I see the mentor tool controller has ID 2, mentor blocks controller ID 3, and department table controller ID 4. But they all have the same parent scope. So one way of communicating between these modules is, since they all share the same parent scope, to just go ahead and put the data on the parent scope. And then another way of doing it is to create a service that's shared among all of the scopes. And it's a little cleaner to create a service, so that's what I'm going to do here. So in my mentor tool module, I'm going to say app.service, and I'll give it a name, mentor data service. And this is going to take a function and it's going to return a service object. And then inside this service object, I can set whatever properties I want. So for example, I can have a var departments equals empty, and then I can create a method called get departments, like so. And then set departments is a function that takes a value, and it's going to set departments equal value. And then I can do the same thing with mentors. And this is going to take a value. So now any controller that has access to this service can access departments and mentors. And in order to give the app access to the service, I just add it to the parameter list. And Angular magically does the right thing here. So I'm going to pass it into my department table module, and also pass it into my mentor block module. And in my department table module, I'm also going to set mentor data service dot set departments to response. And then in mentor blocks module, I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to call mentor data service set mentors. So it's set mentors. To response. So now I have both the mentors and the departments in one place. Let me go ahead and log those messages. And then I'm going to reload the page and see what I get. So I got a setting mentors and a setting departments, which means that both sets of data are available in my service. So then I'm going to do the calculation in the service, because the service is going to know when it has both things. So after it's got the departments, I'm going to create a function called crosslist, and if departments.length is 0, then I'm going to skip this. And if mentors.length is 0. I'm going to skip it. Otherwise, I have both departments and mentors, so I can go ahead and calculate the mentor last name for each department. So first what I want to do is build a hash table with the mentor IDs as the key and the last name as the value. So here's a new object. And I also want to set mentor IDs sub 0 dot last name equal that. Make it a dash. Because I know the mentor ID sub 0 is undefined. And then mentors dot for each function mentor, I'm going to set mentor IDs sub mentor.id equal, set it to mentor. So now I know for any ID who the mentor is, and then departments dot for each I'm going to set department dot last name equal to mentor IDs sub department dot mentor ID dot last name. So that's going to set the last name for the department to be the last name of the mentor for that department. So here's the tricky part. If we want to get all of the controllers to respond to this change, what we need to do is get access to the root scope. So everything inherits from the root scope. So we pass in root scope here, and then we use a method of the root scope called digest. And basically what this does is it tells all of the watchers on all the values from Angular to check and see whether their values, the values that they're watching, have changed or not. So that's what digest does. And since we're telling the root scope to digest, all of the little baby scopes are going to check all of their watchers as well. So now we have to make our department table module watch to see whether departments has changed or not. So in here, what we're going to do is add a watch statement, $scope dot $watch, and we give it a function that returns the value that we want to check. So return mentor data services dot get departments. Make sure we got that right. Get departments. And then if that's changed, then we call a function that takes two parameters, new val and old val. And what we're going to do is set scope.departments equal new val. So that will rely on the data binding for departments to update the view. Now, we left out a step here, so we need to call this crosslist function every time it's possibly ready. So basically when we set the departments, we call crosslist. And when we set the mentors, we call crosslist. And then here, where we're outputting the mentor ID, now we're going to output last name, which will initially be undefined, but then later on when the data arrives, hopefully it'll get updated with the right values. So let's go ahead and hit reload. So we have an error somewhere probably. Oh, I forgot to close off my parentheses. So close off the watch function, semicolon. Okay, and now I have an error. Cannot set property last name of undefined. So we're getting the error right here. So mentor ID sub 0 is not an object. So let's do it this way instead. Tool module. So let's go ahead and set mentor ID sub 0 equal to an object with last name property dash. Like so. Instead, okay, so now we're getting called. We had some errors, but we got some data. Oh, it's showing the names. It's kind of exciting. Let's take a look at the errors we're getting. Mentor data services is not defined. Okay, so let's go ahead and put a breakpoint there and see what we get. So mentor data services. Oh, mentor data service, not services. Okay. So a little typo there. On line 19. Mentor data service. Right here. So reload. Still have one error. Okay, so no errors so far. Oh, one thing to make life a little easier, I should have done this in the beginning, is instead of loading the minified version of Angular, let me download the development version instead. So I'm just going to cut the word min out of there. And that might make it a little easier to understand what's going on. So now it's giving me a more useful message, digest already in process. So it doesn't like it because it's calling digest while it's already digesting. So I think I can get rid of this entirely. I think I don't have to call that because it's still in the process. And then beautiful. So it worked. So I didn't need to call digest after all. The fact that it was already being called from, basically here's where it's being called from. So in mentor blocks, when the mentor is received, it's calling here, and that's still in the middle of digest because it's processing the return value from the AJAX. And same thing here. So basically all we have to do is watch for mentor data services.getDepartments to change, and everything else works correctly. And if we reload this enough, so it called departments and then mentors and then departments, and it still worked. So it should work in either order, mentors and departments and mentors, and it works either order.